Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. That was a strange game. But somehow, we're going to be talking about a 6-2 victory. I still can't get my head around exactly what happened. It was a weird evening, a weird match, but plenty of cool stuff to talk about as well. Apologies if this video is going out late. I presume it will by the time it uploads. It may even be in the morning. Taking my youngest to university today, which was a very emotional day. If you hear my wife sobbing in the background, anyone that's been through the whole drop off at university will know exactly what that's all like. Hopefully, she'll do very well and settle in very quickly, though. Seem to be some nice people in the accommodation she's staying at anyway, so fingers crossed on all of that. But back to Tottenham Hotspur and that whole world. It was just so weird. I mean, it started even with the kind of iffy minute silence before the game. Spurs had good intentions with it all, of course, like every ground. You had Ledley King and Emile Heskey came out, putting wreaths in the centre circle. The players came straight up and lined up in a semicircle with Conte and Brendan Rodgers out there as well, and the referee. And then the silence was a bit awkward in terms of you just had these random people that clearly, and people from both sides, Spurs and Leicester, who just decided they just weren't going to respect it. And that caused other people to kind of shout at them to shut up, which in itself, I totally understand the good intentions those shouts were coming from. But if anything, that made other people turn and tell them to shut up, and it just became really awkward. I should stress this is very much isolated kind of voices and people. Really, the vast majority, whatever it was, 61,500 people in there, absolutely were respecting it. But it was just these awkward things, and then someone, just as it all kind of starting to quieten down, well, let's put it this way, nothing screams respect for a 96-year-old monarch that's passed away quite like someone shouting out, "Show some beeping respect, you beeping beeps." And yeah, they didn't use the word beeps or beeping. And it was just one of those where we were all like, oh my goodness, that just sounds so awful. And obviously we were wondering how that came across on TV as well. From what I understand from people kind of watched on TV, it just sounded like the odd shout and things like that. But yeah, it wasn't perfect, let's put it that way. But the vast majority of people, like I say, respected it all, and obviously they sang "God Save the King," which still sounds really strange. That's going to take a lot of getting used to, of course. And then, yeah, and the match itself kind of went in this weird kind of. The first half was just a complete mess. It was two teams that seemed to refuse to want to keep the ball. They're just playing some really bad passes to each other. Yeah, and until Sonny came along and essentially. Sonny definitely was the star of the show, let's put it that way. I think the game probably started to change at half time. For the second half. But Sonny definitely came on and just ensured it was going nowhere else but Tottenham's favour. He really, I think I've said this before, I want players to grab games. These top world-class players to grab games by the scruff of the neck, and that was what Sonny did. He came on and just dragged the whole game and took it with him. And yeah, 6-2 scoreline. It's just mad. It's utterly mad. Honestly, I think, especially when they kind of scored that early penalty, I did not think that was the way that the game was going to go. I thought it was going to be a little bit kind of back and forth, especially the way it developed. But to end up 6-2, I mean, it just paints a whole different picture. It's so weird. I was just looking here because I looked at the table just before I came on this as well. And bearing in mind, obviously, Spurs suffered their first defeat in the season in Lisbon. The Premier League is so different looking for Tottenham. Obviously, unbeaten, 17 points, same as Man City. City second, Spurs third. That lot down the road, obviously, won today, which keeps them back on top. But Spurs have scored 18 goals, which only City have scored more. This is a funny thing, isn't it? It's kind of there's been some kind of grumbling about the style of football under Conte in the last couple of games, but they're second top scorers in the league, and I wonder whether they're still the top scorers in 2022. I haven't looked that stat up, but I wouldn't be shocked if they are. And look, here's some more little stats and pieces that came out of that. So Conte has now led Spurs to their joint best start to a Premier League campaign, level with the 2016-17 season when Pochettino's team finished runners-up to Chelsea. And yes, you know who Chelsea were managed by that year, of course, Antonio Conte. If they avoid defeat in the North London derby when the international break ends, then Spurs will have equalled their longest unbeaten run in the Premier League of 14 matches, which is a long time. This latest victory made it 4 in a row at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to start this campaign, which means Spurs have had a home winning streak of more than 3 from the beginning of top flight season for the first time since 1987-88 when they managed 5. And obviously Tottenham's next home Premier League game, I think, is against Everton, October 15th. So they might yet beat that as well. And then there were 2 set-piece goals. Gianni Vio will be very happy. 2 more from his playbook. The first one, which was Kulusevski playing a short ball to Perisic, who came out. Kulusevski takes the ball, comes out to the edge of the box, just the corner, whips in that beautiful deep cross to Kane, and he heads home. So, called for Kulusevski to come back in. Instant, pretty much assist in that first, not instant, but instant equaliser, wasn't it, to Tielemans' penalty, which was, that was a funny one, that one. We'll talk about the various players on that one coming up, because I want to talk about these 2 set pieces first. Harry Kane, that makes it 6 in 6 in the Premier League as well. And I don't actually think he's reached he's hitting his peak at the moment either. I think he's not quite firing on all cylinders and stuff. To get 6 in 6 when you're not playing particularly great, that's something. And then obviously the second one was more a straightforward set piece. Perisic whipping the ball in, and Eric Dyer again getting one of those flicked headers in to head it into the far corner. Another nice goal for him. I know that's something that the coaching staff really want him to improve on this season. So yeah, doing very well to have done that. And another little stat for you: Spurs have scored more headed goals than any other side in the Premier League this campaign, with 7 in 7 games, just 1 fewer than their total for the whole of last season with headed goals. It's obviously not all set pieces, but there's definitely a set piece involvement there with Vio. He is making a difference. Another little one for you: it's the first time that Spurs have netted 6 goals in a Premier League home game since 9-1 win against Wigan. Do you remember that? 2009. Did Defoe score 5? I think it was that day. That feels like an age ago. And the thing is, look, they're all great stats. They're all very nice, and they're the kind of that show an upward trend. The momentum's going in the right way, but ultimately Conte wants something more tangible than that. He wants success. But I think I said this maybe in the last one. I can't remember when I last said it, but I still completely subscribe to it. That if you can not be playing particularly well, but yet still be unbeaten, and sitting around there up at the summit of the Premier League as well, I think it's a really good sign, because you can maybe only really get better, and others, when they have these iffy spells, they might drop points. I think it's a good sign for Tottenham right now. I think they're. It's not always great football, and there were some moments, yesterday where it was very iffy, especially at the back as well. But there were positive signs as well, and Sonny obviously firing is one of the biggest ones you can get, because that man can drag Spurs through games. That first half was so weird. It was so open. Honestly, you felt like either team could have scored in any moment. Lloris again, I felt, had to make a few really good saves to keep Spurs just at the right kind of place in the game as well. We could talk about the first goal. First goal was just a mess. Perisic had a little bit of a mare. Missed one tackle. Missed a second tackle, and then that forced Sanchez to dive into a tackle where pretty much started to dive just before the game had started, and eventually ended up there putting his boot into it wasn't good. It really wasn't good at all, and brought a man down on the edge of the box. The only kind of I suppose the thing you could say about it was it on the line? Was it just before it? But VAR checks it, and it was bang on. It was absolutely fine for a penalty. Then obviously you had the Lloris making a terrific save from Tielemans' first effort, and then the VAR very quickly came straight up on the screen. So they were all celebrating the players, but we could see in the media section straight away that thing, and he had moved. There's been other incidences where we've seen keepers move and it not get done, but that's the way it is. Sometimes it goes for you, sometimes it doesn't. And obviously it did later in the game. VAR worked in Spurs' favour as well, so I guess it all balanced out in the end. But what was interesting was that, and obviously there was the Maddison goal as well. I'm slight two minds about this. I do think Sessegnon could have been stronger. I think Sessegnon was beaten down that side for the header by Castagna. Which always makes me think. I think I tweeted this way back. Always makes me think if you're a Seinfeld fan, and George Costanza, when he was young and he was at school, his coach used to call him Castagna. And every time I hear Timothy Castagna, it sounds the same. Timothy Castagna. For anyone that watches Seinfeld, that'll mean something. For everyone else, it'll be like, move on. But yeah, I thought Castagna got down that flank a little bit too easily. Put in the cross. I was coming and and looking at the defending for it. I don't know where Longley had gone. Longley completely disappeared. It was just Dyer and Sessegnon. I can't make up my mind whether Dyer wasn't close enough to him or it was just a really good hit from Maddison. It's a tough one. It was a nice hit and there was nothing Lloris could do about it. But yeah, it's just two quite poor goals to concede as well. And I know at half-time, Conte had been really unhappy about the low energy levels. He told me that after the game. He just felt that Spurs, for some reason, were playing with a real kind of... Yeah, just looked slightly knackered in the first half, which shouldn't really be the case. He made 4 changes, so there are plenty of fresh legs in there as well. And he told them to be better in possession, hold on to the ball for longer periods, and take on the instructions of where to hurt Leicester. Mainly down those flanks, and it worked really well. Got some Conte quotes from you. It was a really, really long press conference. He took an age to come out. Rodgers came out first, but even he took a while, and then his press conference was just essentially him. It was quite an awkward one. It was him essentially saying, I'm hoping they don't sack me, but if they do, kind of understand where they're coming from. It was a really awkward press conference. It kind of... It's one of those where you feel like the manager knows that he's probably on borrowed time. It wasn't. It's not nice to kind of watch those things. And with Conte, I knew that he was... I was told from other broadcasters that had been interviewed, because the way it works is they go and do whoever the broadcaster is, broadcasting the game. So was it Sky? I think it was Sky yesterday. Then they speak to the BBC. Then they do Spurs. I think they do some other broadcasters as well, maybe foreign ones. They do the Spurs play, as it now is. And then they'll come to us. And yeah, Conte was a good probably hour after the final whistle. And from everyone has said, he was giving some long answers to questions. And it was... Yeah, it's an interesting one. He came in and he did exactly the same. I asked the first question, the general, I can't remember. My question was something about it being such an open game, and also with Sonny, how essentially is Sonny coming back and proving a point. And so this was his answer. This was the full answer to the first long question. First long answer. He said in the first half it was a really strange game because I think we started the game very well. We had possession, we created difficulty from the start, but maybe in our best moment we conceded the penalty. We were really happy for the save for Hugo. Then when the VAR decided to repeat the penalty, it was a bit disappointing. Then they scored the goal. In this type of situation, your confidence can go down. And instead, we were really good to go 1-1, then go to score again with 2 set pieces. After this, I think we can do much better because I don't know why we lost a bit of confidence with the possession. We lost stupid balls and Leicester took confidence. They scored to make it 2-2. And after the first half, for sure, I wasn't happy because honestly, I'd seen not a lot of energy in my team and I was a bit worried. But in the second half, it was totally different because the energy was really high. We showed great confidence with the ball. We did really well. In between the halves, we worked to understand the way to attack them with the space they conceded to us, especially in the flank with the wing-backs. And then he said, I'm happy for Sonny to change the game as a substitute in this way, but I'm especially happy for the team because we needed this. We have 3 points and we have 17 points after 7 games. I think it was a really good start to the season, and now there is the international break. Fingers crossed, I hope for no more injuries because in October we have 12 games in a row. Difficult games because we're talking about Premier League, Champions League, Premier League and Champions League. If I have to be disappointed, I'm disappointed with the game we lost to Sporting Lisbon because we didn't deserve to lose this game. For this reason, I was unhappy because I don't think Sporting Lisbon were better than us or didn't show to be better than us. Yeah, I mean, it's all valid points. Can't complain with any of that. I think he was just in a good mood. He was just answering lots of questions in quite a long, I'd say insightful way as well. It wasn't like he was just rambling. There was some good stuff in there as well. And there's much more to come from Spurs as well. You know, they've got a nice foundation to build on. I think that's the key thing. That like I say, they haven't been playing particularly well, but they've been racking up the points. They've got that foundation to now build upon, especially as they get better and better, and maybe tweak that formation a bit as well, which we'll have a little chat with about in a mo. And the fixtures, honestly, they're going to come like a conveyor belt. And as soon as this international break's done, you're going to have a game like every 2 to 3 days until the World Cup all starts to kick off. All the countries kind of go their separate ways to start warming up for it. And yeah. I mean, was it quite fitting, perhaps, that, you know, with obviously the tributes paid to the Queen after her 70 years of service to the country, before, during and after the game, yeah, perhaps it was fitting that on the pitch it was the son who stepped up when called upon. Obviously, Spurs' son, not her son. I think the thing with Sonny, I've said this a million times before, but when you start to doubt him, that's when he's at his most dangerous. I always feel that. Of course he lost a bit of confidence. Was the Golden Boot winner, so I think there's more focus on him now. There's more attention on him, not only from opposition teams, but everyone's watching him. I was speaking to some chap in the queue waiting for the plane back from Lisbon, and he made a really good point as well. I don't think he ever told me his name. I can't remember now. But he said about, had it just been a summer as well where the focus had really been on him, not only because of the Golden Boot stuff, but they did that big tour with South Korea as well, and it just stoked up a real kind of, I guess, Son mania. And then maybe that just put a lot more pressure on his shoulders, and I just think everything worked perfectly on Saturday for him. It did. I just loved the way it happened. I did. I think I tweeted something like, it was perfect. If someone could have written the script for Saturday's match for Sonny, that was it. It just came on wanting to prove a point. He looked sharp straight away as soon as he came on. And, the way he took that goal, it was like all the lost confidence he had, it's like it just like restored into him, like someone had flipped a switch in him. Bentancur obviously winning the ball, played it into him, and he ran on. He went this way, that way. And then right at the end, just curled. It was like a trademark. I think Sonny's trademark is being able to curl with either foot, and this one was beautiful. Right foot. Wouldn't even say it was. I wrote at the time it was top right corner, but when you kind of watch it back, he actually kind of curled it around the keeper and almost away from the corner. Not central, but just wasn't quite in the corner. It was just that good. It curled around the keeper. So that was superb. And then I just loved it. I looked down at the touchline as well, and even Perisic, who'd come off about 20 minutes before, he was kind of, as he saw Son going up the pitch, he kind of started to advance out of the dugout and like almost kind of came across behind Conte into the technical area. And he was still wearing his white shirt as well. It was quite noticeable. He hadn't, normally they put on some kind of jacket or something, but he was like wandering forward, and you just see him put his arms aloft kind of thing as Sonny scores the goal. He just knew exactly what was going to happen. You could just see he sensed it, like full kit kind of going out there as well. And it was, for me, He scored a lot of fantastic goals, Sonny, but I think that might be up there as one of his best. Obviously, it's not the best because, remember the goal against Burnley was incredible. The goal against Chelsea was incredible. He scored some incredible goals. But I just think in terms of the timing of it, when some people were doubting him, social media mainly, which we know is not the barometer at all of judging anyone because it's a place of hysteria. But I just think in terms of the moment he was rotated out of the team, it was probably only ever going to seen as being dropped because of the noise around him from the media as well. I think to come back and score a goal of that top level quality just said everything about the man, and it was superb. And do you know what? The second goal was almost as beautiful to watch. Pretty much, it was Kane, wasn't it? Kane took the ball, played it across the pitch to him, and danced inside a bit, Sonny, and just the way he catches it when he curls it, it was beautiful. Left foot straight into the corner, just kind of inside the left-hand post. Almost as good for me, that goal. Just the execution, the technical quality required to do it was something special. And do you know what I found fascinating was like the first goal, he just stood there. He was like proper angry looking. Second one, he kind of ran, I think, and put his fingers to his lips and kind of like shushing everyone that criticised him. And I like that. I like that. I think Conte kind of even said it in the days before. He said he's angry. He is angry at everything. And I like that. Look, his words after the game were more, I felt very humble and very quite emotional and really well said. But I kind of like the fact that in the game, he was peed off. He was properly making his point. I think to the fans as well. I think, he definitely said afterwards, obviously got a lot of support as well. And when he did his warm-up during the game, he got a lot of love down the touchline from the Spurs fans. They really, really let him know what they thought of him. And actually, when they read out his name before the game, I remember that now as well, there was a big cheer when his name was read out. And that wasn't people cheering that he wasn't in the team or anything. That was properly support for him. But I just felt he needed to get that out of him. And he's a guy that I think you sometimes don't realise that about Sonny because he's such a nice guy, such a smiley, happy, popular guy. He's got not a nasty streak, but he's got a tough streak, and he can get angry and he can let his emotions show. We've seen that a few times on the pitch. And his words, here are his words after the game, because I thought they were really interesting. And it was just, I think he mentioned it as well. It's just getting that anger out of his system on the pitch. I'm trying to think who he said. I think it was his interview with Spurs Play. I think it was to Milesy and Ben he spoke. Was it Milesy and Ben? It might have been Ben and was it Rob? I'm trying to remember the other chap that does Spurs Play as well. So this is Sonny. All the frustration, all the negative feeling in my head, in my body, it just went through me. I couldn't move. I just looked up at the stands and thought, I'm out of this tough tunnel. To be honest, I was a bit emotional because it had been a tough moment for me. And yeah, I had his... I've got it down there. Got some not even nicer quotes actually than those about how he felt he'd let his players down. But I don't mind that at all. I don't mind angry Sonny. I think angry Sonny is a Sonny with a point to prove. And his third goal, again, good work from, I think it was Basuma. Then he played Bentancur away. Højbjerg away. Højbjerg plays in Sonny. Sonny knocks it under the keeper, bounces into net. We had that moment where the linesman put his flag up, the assistant put his flag up. VAR checked it, and we were kind of looking at it on our monitors that we had, and we were like, do you know what? It's going to be tight. I think that might even be on. And then suddenly, there you go. Gets his hat-trick, and I can't remember someone, it might have been Dyak, ran over and lifted him in the air. And I quite like that because VAR has kind of not killed celebrations, but made them incredibly awkward at times. You've got some people, like we saw Richarlison, whip his shirt off and then not have the goal. And then you'll get other people that don't know whether to celebrate. And then you get a celebration that then has this long pause. And I quite like the fact that players are now getting this habit of when they get the verdict from VAR, they're still going over and celebrating the goal properly again, almost, if they have to. And that one, I think he did the 3 raised fingers of, say, 3 goals. Obviously, everyone he did his Sonny photograph celebration as well. And I noticed after the game as well. After that goal, he did smile. That was kind of when he first did a proper smile, and it was quite nice. You've seen the images of the whole team going around him as well and surrounding him. If there's anyone that has got all of his teammates behind him, it's Sonny. They've got his back. They absolutely have. It was just a tough start to the season. That's all it was, and everyone goes through it. And I noticed after, when he came off the pitch, one of the biggest hugs he got, and it was a long, kind of emotional hug, was with Gianpiero Ventroni, the fitness coach, which I always find is so kind of it's a strange paradox. He's a guy that works the players so hard. I've seen him make Sonny collapse and almost be sick on the side of the pitch, out in Korea when he was training him. Yet the players adore Ventroni. And there was this really nice moment where they were having a real embrace. It wasn't just a kind of a post-match hug. It was a real outpouring of emotion kind of hug. It was really, really nice. And I think it's interesting because I feel like Sonny will have felt he proved his point. But I think Conte will also feel he proved his point. Because what he's done, his whole idea behind rotation is that he's giving them kind of a rest, not only physically but mentally. And I think in Son's case, that was no bad thing at all, because obviously, it starts to get into your head. You start to kind of psych yourself out, and he's had, shots that have become own goals for opposition players. He's hit the woodwork a few times. He's had, goals chalked out with VAR as well. And I think just taking him out of the forward line, giving him something else to focus on, and that's the anger of being taken out. And he wasn't dropped, any of that. He was rotated. It was his turn to have the rotation. And I think it was just very clever by Conte as well, because we were in the press box, we were saying that you could kind of see the way the game was stretched and open, and that Leicester were really pushing up quite high. It was made for Son. It was actually probably made for Vardy as well for Leicester, but for Son, for Spurs, it was there for him to counterattack, especially bringing him on later in the game when Leicester would have tired slightly and had more gaps around. It was perfect. In terms of management, I think it was all very, very clever. And, this is the thing. In a way, Sonny's 3 goals were actually showing the virtues of the rotation he clearly didn't want to be a part of. And no player wants to come out of the team. But Conte, as he stressed, and I've got some quotes coming up, he does it for their best interest, protecting them from injury risks. They call it hitting the, what's it called? I can't remember, it's called the red zone. It's not like NFL red zone, but I think there's a moment where they can get into a red zone, they call it, in terms of injury, where they can play, but the chance of injury is higher, or pulling a muscle or something like that. So, it is good for him. And I like Eric Dyer's quotes afterwards, that Spurs play. I think it's to Milesy, I think he spoke to. He said, "We were joking after the game that maybe the manager should drop him more often. We're so happy for him. It's been a difficult start to the season. He lives for scoring goals, and it's no secret it's been tough. His work rate has been consistently good, but it just hasn't been falling for him. Obviously, he's come back in a fantastic way, and that's what we need from the whole squad. Players to come in and help us. Whoever comes in has to impact the team in a positive way. We need everyone with the schedule we have to have that mindset, and Sonny is the perfect example of that today." And interestingly, little stats for you, Sonny became the first Tottenham player to score a hat-trick from the bench in the Premier League. Ever in the Premier League. We know football didn't start with the Premier League, but that's kind of how they do a lot of these stats now. It was also his 3rd hat-trick in the Premier League after the 4 goals against Southampton, that 5-2 win in 2020, and 3 in the 4-0 win at Aston Villa on April 9th of this year. And interestingly, all of his 3 hat-tricks have come since Harry Kane's last one in the Premier League. Sonny, the man with the hat-tricks. I always used to kind of think of Kane being the hat-trick man, but there you go. Sonny's had 3 since Kane's last one. I was talking about those quotes where Sonny sounded quite emotional. It came to Sky. I think it was the immediate post-match one. And he said, "It was a top performance, and I was really frustrated as well. The way I play, I can do much better than I have been. I've been disappointed. The team has been doing a really, really good job, but I was disappointed with my performances. There was a tough game at 3-2, and you never know in the Premier League. I wanted to do my best for the team. I'll always try to do that when I play. I tried to help the team on the bench. I'm glad we won the game before the international break. My finishing has been poor this season. I've also been a little bit unlucky with an own goal, 2 offside goals and hitting the crossbar. I knew goals were coming and I wasn't worried. I've always had great supporters, teammates and coaches behind me. I like to shoot from outside the box. I've practiced that since I was a kid. Even now after training, if I have time, I try to practice from that position and hitting the top corner. I'm really glad the ball finally went in. I was pretty sure I was onside for the hat-trick as well. He said, I'm glad I've been able to help the team. That is really important. I can go to international duty now with renewed energy. I'm getting emotional about the support, to be honest. There's been amazing support and I've always felt like I've disappointed my teammates and fans with my performances. They have always been supporting me. As if you couldn't love Sonny more. He then goes and says how he feels he's let everyone down and disappointed them. He hasn't. Just went through a little rough spell. And just, the natural rotation that Conte is trying to bring in, it did its job. It really did, and then some. Conte quotes for you. Story time with Alistair. I'm pleased for Sonny for sure because we can speak. We can try to give an explanation if a player... I think this was to me, actually. It's to my question. We can try to give an explanation if a player doesn't score, especially when he's a striker. But at the end, the striker has to score because if the striker doesn't score, the confidence goes down. For sure, in the last 7 games, he had a lot of chances to score, but he was unlucky. For him to score 3 today in only 13 minutes, that's the point as well. I completely forgot that. 13 minutes and 21 seconds, 27 seconds. It was within the 20 seconds mark. I think it was a record for me. The first time someone scored 3 as a substitute in only this time. To see Sonny with the ball after the hat-trick, then also the trophy for the best player of the game was great. It was amazing for me, for the teammates, because we needed this. We, not only Sonny, we needed this. I'm happy, but I repeat, this is not a problem. If we solve the problem in this way, we have to repeat the situation in the next game with all the players. In the future, all the players will be asking me, please, put me on the bench. And then they come in and score 3 goals. But I'm joking, of course. I love it when he does it. He tells a joke and then he has to explain that he's told a joke. Sonny was fantastic. And he did. He stole the show. A game that didn't really have a narrative because it was so end-to-end ended up having a really lovely narrative to it. And that was the Sonny show. The Heung-min show. It was terrific. It was lovely. And see him afterwards, the way he came down the tunnel and the fans and everything, it was perfect. And carrying that match ball, of course. But I would say, I hope that as fantastic as he was, Sonny, I hope it doesn't completely overshadow what I felt was a brilliant performance, especially second half from Rodrigo Bentancur. For me, in that second half, that might be the best I've seen him play. First half, he was a little bit sloppy. He gave the ball away in some really silly positions, but that's pretty much what most of the Spurs team were doing. But I just felt second half, I don't know whether Conte made a special kind of point of talking to him or one of the coaches did, but second half I felt Bentancur came out like an absolute kind of steam train ready to change the game. It was all action. He was everywhere, covered every blade of grass. He was pressing high up the pitch, dispossessed Wilfred Ndidi, of course, and then he ran through and he calmly curled this shot in off the inside of the right-hand post, which was as good a shot as like Sonny or Kane would have been very, very happy with that shot. It was a really, really good goal. But it was his first goal for Spurs. I think we all kind of went in the press box, we were like, was it his first goal? And we all had to kind of look in the stats and it's like, yeah, he's a guy that definitely should score more because he clearly has that technical ability. It was a lovely finish. Then he started, obviously, the move for Sonny's goal. He pressed and tackled James Justin. Then he played it through to Sonny as he ran on. It almost had another assist as well. He kind of got down the right and he curled in this lovely ball around the defender into Sonny's path. But Sonny just kind of snatched at it slightly. He scuffed it and it didn't really go anywhere. But yeah, it was absolutely top draw display. And Eric Dyer said a really good thing in his interview with Milesy afterwards. He said, Rodri is amazing. What a fantastic player. I think we play well when he plays well. And I think that's the biggest compliment I can give to him. when he plays like he did in the second half with such a good team with him, because he offers so much defensively, and then with the ball he's got so much quality and a lot of personality as well to play and play in tight spaces. I'm really happy for him. Rodri was fantastic today. And yeah, that says it all. That is the mark of an important player. When they play well, the whole team plays well. It like radiates that confidence. And he was just, Leicester just couldn't get away from him. He was like a snarling animal in the midfield. Just kept taking the ball off of everyone. Just prowling around in there. He did it so well. But then to switch instantly from doing that to then have the quality to release the ball really well or go up the pitch and score that goal. Yeah, very, very good. And I felt it kind of ticked all the boxes for a Conte midfielder. You know, defensively dominant. He was mopping up everything, full of energy. But also, when asked to contribute going forward, he did. And the other thing I think we'll take away from that kind of second half performance was the fact that we got to see a 3-5-2. And it was with Yves Bissouma, who'd, you know, a little bit of a redemption story for him, I guess, because, you know, Conte had, I don't want to go as far as say hung him out to dry. I don't think that's fair, but Conte had kind of been covering himself a little bit, because obviously people have been questioning, why is one of the best midfielders in the Premier League out the top six, why is he not been getting more minutes? So I think Conte felt he had to kind of address that, and obviously he said before the game that he was still struggling a little bit with the tactical aspect and taking that on of Conte's idea of football. And also he wanted him to improve the defensive side of things. So I think to switch to this 3-5-2, funny enough, was Kulusevski coming off. I did feel that obviously he'd made his point, came straight and got an assist. But obviously he came on, he was sacrificed for Bissouma to come on. And the whole team, obviously it's a bit different because Leicester were tired, they were chasing the game as well, but I do think we looked at that and we saw Spurs looking comfortable. I think the Son-Kane partnership, of course, suddenly becomes a real proper striker partnership when those two are together. And I felt Bissouma ironically, for someone who apparently needs to improve defensively, I felt he delivered great cover for Bentancur and Højbjerg to sweep up the pitch. And I think that's why, you know, Sonny's third goal, that was Bissouma that made the tackle, sent Højbjerg away, and Højbjerg goes up the pitch and feeds Son to score. I think if I remember correctly, Bissouma made another really good inch-perfect tackle in his box as well. Did really well. And I think, yeah, it's an interesting one to see that formation, because Conte has previously said the 3-4-3 he feels suits Spurs better because of the players that they have. Mainly, I think that's the amount of forwards, because he feels he can fit in Richarlison, Son and Kane, or Kulusevski, Son and Kane up there, Richarlison as well, and obviously you've got Lucas, and yeah, I think it looked quite well, and I want it looked quite good, and I wonder, it's just me, but when you've got those three in the middle, it gives the wing-backs even more licence to be able to get forward without worrying too much about coming back and making making a five at the back, because one of those midfielders can kind of drop back in there as well. So I wonder, does the 3-5-2 under Tottenham involve Kulusevski playing as a right wing-back? Because suddenly that changes everything. You've got Kulusevski and Perisic as your wing-backs. That's two players who can deliver fantastic top-draw crosses into the box and create. And you're not really losing then any of those attacking players that you were worried about losing. You're essentially swapping Bissouma for Emerson, I guess. And Bissouma is coming in, and you've got a powerful midfield there with those three players. Bentancur, Højbjerg and Bissouma, that is a strong midfield. I'm intrigued to see whether we see that at all, because he'd hinted to me in the presser before the game about maybe playing Perisic at right wing back, and we got to see that. It worked early on. It looked fantastic. It looked really good. I thought Sessegnon and Perisic were raiding down both flanks, and it really looked like it was causing Leicester problems. But then, yeah, Perisic was the one. I don't know. It was like Conte switched them after Maddison's goal. Cess switched to the right. Perisic came to the left. Don't know whether that was just to deal with Castagna, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, Perisic only lasted 10 minutes the second half and they took him off. I don't know if it was injury related. I haven't heard anything about that. Or whether it was just, to give him a little bit of a rest because he's played a lot of the recent games. And then obviously Emerson came on. But yeah, I do wonder with Kulusevski playing there how that works and how that looks. I thought Perisic was going forward very good. Obviously, an assist from the corner to Dyer. Had another one where he put the ball on a plate really for Sanchez to head and the keeper tipped it onto the crossbar. Sanchez had a funny game. Started off, obviously, that really ropey tackle that didn't tackle and just gave away a penalty. Had a couple of other shaky moments. In true Sanchez style, he also had some good moments. But I would say he didn't do his case any good to try and replace Romero anytime soon. And, and Romero again, he got a little bit of a rest because people forget he kind of had that injury and he's came back and played almost every minute since, and I don't think Romero had looked at his best after coming back from the injury either, so I think that maybe mentally tired as well, as Conte says. But yeah, I thought it was quite interesting because I didn't think Perisic defensively was as good. Like I say, those two kind of lunging tackles that didn't really do anything in that opening stages, but there were also another couple of occasions where I felt he was got past a little bit too easily, and maybe that was part of the switch as well. Maybe both players getting a little bit of a different challenge on either side. But yeah, it was interesting to see because when it was announced that he actually was going for Perisic on the right side, I was quite excited because that could be a really good look to it kind of thing. It could work, and he really does like Sessegnon. I cannot stress that enough. I don't think Sessegnon was perfect yesterday at all. I felt he had some good moments. I thought he defended well in some moments, funny enough, that Castagna moment aside. But yeah, probably not done enough to take the position off Perisic at this moment, but definitely Conte trusts him that when he's going to rotate, he trusts him to come in and come in for Perisic and not be concerned about kind of what comes next. So yeah, that's a good thing for him, and obviously he'll have Udogie next season as well to add to the mix. And I do wonder whether with this 3-5-2 and looking quite good in that second half, whether do you want to go to the Emirates and only play with two midfielders against their three? I wonder whether that midfield of Basuma, who'll have had two international games in that period as well, so he'll only be sharper. To have Basuma, Bentancur and Højbjerg all in a three at Arsenal becomes a bit more of a different thing, a stronger thing with Kulusevski on that right as well. Yeah, I'd be really intrigued to see how that plays out ahead of the trip to the Emirates, because I'm starting to feel it makes sense. I really am. He's it was really interesting, Conte, afterwards. Look, I've always felt, and it's always the case, it's not just Tottenham, it's any club, you need a strong leader as your manager. You need someone that leaves no question marks over what they want and what is going to happen. And that man is Antonio Conte for Tottenham Hotspur. He really, really is. He's doesn't doubt himself. He has a very high opinion of himself, as the best in their fields do. And I just love the fact that he was asked whether it had been too easy in the past for Spurs, for players at Spurs, because they felt they were going to always be in the team. And honestly, his answer couldn't have been more emphatic. It was this. And this is the Conte way. Honestly, I don't care what happened in the past. I have my management, I have my own idea, and my story speaks very clear. In every situation I work in, I lift a trophy at the end. It means maybe my vision, my work, and my idea has to be given credit. I think he was trying to say that. Otherwise, I go with my idea. I go with my thoughts, my way to build something important. I think the club is really happy for what we are doing with the players, with the staff, and for sure, I don't want to compromise. I don't accept compromise off anybody. This has to be very clear. I go for my way, I go for my road, and this has to be very important because I know I'm going to try to build something important for the future for the club that decided to work with me. It's either it's Conte way is get behind me or get out of my way, pretty much. And you can apply those sentiments whether you're talking to the players, to the club, the hierarchy, the fans. It's essentially just, because some of the fans have been downing him. Of course they have. Again, should always stress, social media. Should caveat it. It's very different, I think, in the stadium to those on social media. So it's a very, very different audience. But I just found it fascinating. The terminology, the words he's saying. He pretty much did everything, but get his medals out and just chuck them on the table and just say, "Look at me, don't doubt me." He is. He's won everything. He's won everywhere he's gone to. He might know what he's talking about. And I do. I find it really fascinating because I think the fans are going to really struggle with rotation. They are. Because there's this weird kind of clash of thoughts in fans' heads. And to be fair, we're the same. In media as well, when we talk about the game as well, we can be like this. In one aspect, the fans will call for a stronger squad. We want this player. We want that player. We want like this. But then in the next breath, they're saying, no, you should always play your strongest team. Play your strongest team kind of thing in this game. I want to see this player play. I want to see this one. Whereas for someone like Conte, there's not only the rotation aspect, but the strongest team is the one that fits the team you're playing. It's able to counteract some of the aspects of their play that's strong and also amplify your own strengths as well. I find that really interesting. It's a great kind of dilemma in the way we think, is that we want a strong squad, but we also want the strongest first 11 to always be out there. And if someone isn't playing, we moan about it. As fans or as journalists, we'll say like, "Oh, why was he dropped?" kind of thing, and he'll say he wasn't dropped. It's rotation, and it's a whole different thing that we've kind of got to get into our heads, because he doesn't care what people on social media think. I know he's got an Instagram account. Whether he runs that or it's someone like a social media manager, I don't know. But do you think he even cares slightly what someone writes in a Twitter post about something he's done or something? Not a jot. This guy has been there, done it, and won it. And it's absolutely nothing. Nothing on social media, I think, can even faze him in the slightest. And he just wants to change the culture as well. This is a nice little thing he said when asked about how difficult. I think it was Tom Barkley from The Sun asked this about, whether people maybe didn't understand how difficult it is to make a decision with someone like Son, because it could have gone a different way. He could have only come on for a few minutes at the end, maybe didn't manage to get a goal in that time, and that lack of confidence is going to go into international break and dragged on to North London Derby. It could have gone on longer. And Conte said, you're right, because the people do not understand, for the coach to manage this type of situation is not easy. It's not easy because sometimes you prefer to play with 13 players, but in some moments I have to take important decisions. First of all, you have to try to be honest in the decision, because if you're honest, you don't lose the respect of your players. I think in my career, every decision that I'm going to take is always for the best of the team. The players know very well that I want to win, and every decision is for the best of the team, also for the best of the player, to protect the players. Because if we have an injury, Harry Kane an injury, Sonny an injury, to only talk about Dejan or Richie is difficult. To have Lucas Moura out for 1 month, it's difficult to manage the situation. It's normal, as in rotation, and I want to bring this team to think of from a superior level, not to stay in the middle, not to stay at Tottenham, because there I play every game. If you think like this, you're probably not going to fight for something important, in my opinion. We have just started this path with the club to have Richarlison up front with Harry, Sonny, Decky, and also Lucas. And then there is Hill, or Jill as he calls him, who is a good prospect and young. It means the situation gives me the possibility to have rotation. In the first 4 games, Richie was on the bench. And then in the 3 games after, with Decky on the bench. And then today, Sonny was on the bench. When we start to play after the international break, 12 games in a row, for sure, I will make rotation. The only thing I ask my players is to give me the possibility. Don't drop the level when we make this rotation. We always want a strong team because we want to fight for every competition. So once the players all picked Brian Hill off the floor, because he would have been absolutely shocked at finally being acknowledged that he existed, I think they'll no doubt have to get into the mindset of being ready to come in and out of the team at a moment's notice. I think it will happen to Harry Kane. Harry Kane is probably... he and Sonny are probably the most important players in Conte's mind. Sonny is probably slightly not easier to rotate, and you saw on Saturday just why that isn't the case. But with Sonny, there are other players who can play in this position, whereas with Kane, it's Richarlison kind of as a slightly unorthodox number 9, but he can play there. But I think the Harry Kane rotation will have to come quite, within that, maybe early on in that run of games after the international break, because the worst thing that can happen, I think, not only for Spurs injuring him, but I'm sure you don't want Harry Kane worrying about getting an injury before the World Cup. You want him to be confident in his body that it's fresh and it's not hitting that red zone area. Hitting the red line. Oh, I can't remember if it's red zone or red line. Too much watching NFL Red Zone, maybe. But yeah, you know what I mean. I think that rotation has to become part of the mindset because, because you don't want to have injuries, fatigue, burnout. All of the players could suffer from that. Even maybe Hugo Lloris. Does Hugo Lloris? I know it's a bit different for a goalkeeper, but mentally there can be fatigue there as well. Does Fraser Forster get a game or two in there as well? Obviously, you've got Carabao Cup matches come into it as well. So more quotes from you. Like I say, it was a long press conference, but I want to try and get as much as he said because there was a lot of interesting stuff. He says, honestly, in the past, I did the same in every situation I worked in. Chelsea, in Juventus, in Inter Milan, and when you want to be competitive and fight for something important, and I repeat, we've just started our path because, in my opinion, our squad is not still ready to be strong compared with City, Liverpool and Chelsea. But then we fight also with Arsenal and United. We've just started. But if the players want to play for something important, to lift a trophy, they have to understand this. Otherwise, they continue to play every game, but they don't go to win anything. This is clear. It happened in the past here, and I repeat, I want to try and change things. I want to try and change to bring this team to another level. I will try to do my best, but I'm not worried about this for sure. It's not easy, it's not simple, but I have to get the best decision in every moment. Also today, Romero, he was on the bench. I played Sanchez. Emerson played every game until now, and then I decided to make a rotation. Yeah, I repeat, if you want to stay in a team with ambition, you have to accept this type of situation. Otherwise, you have to go to a medium team, and then you are sure you will play every game. And then it will be very difficult to lift a trophy in this way. It made me, when he was talking about this, the way he was talking, it reminded me, there's this line that they use, I think, in a couple of the Terminator movies, maybe 3, if not 2, certainly. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger says it once, and Bain's character says it as well in the first one. Essentially, come with me if you want to live. Come with me if you want to live. And I just don't know. I just kind of, I was hearing this. I kind of tweaked it in my head, and I could just hear Conte saying, with his Italian accent, "Come with me if you want to win." That wasn't me doing an Italian accent, but that's it. It's essentially, I know what I'm doing. Trust me. Come with me if you want to win. And putting his hand out, and the players accepting it and coming with him, and I really hope they do, because Spurs have tried so many different ways. They've tried so many different kinds of coaches. And you've got a guy who is one of the best in the world. And I think certainly for the meantime, everyone's got to be all on board. And that means the players, I think those in power at the club have to trust what he's doing. It might be expensive, but I think they have to trust what he's doing. He's very much talking like a man at the start of a journey, which for Conte is, is not the way he's always been in his career. He certainly is talking about like a man who is who's looking to kind of create something special at this football club. And I think the fans kind of do have to be all on board as well. Look, I know it's difficult. I know we all lack patience, and I'm talking about as media as well as fans. It's not as easy as saying everyone has to be all on board, because one defeat, like in Sporting. Sporting, there was a bit of hysteria after that. There was also some valid points about some of the underlying problems. And I'm sure if Spurs in the next game, let's say they do, let's hope not, but if they do lose the North London derby, there'll be a big inquest after that as well. Despite the fact that, Spurs will probably be still up there, third or fourth, whatever. It's just the way football is. We like to analyse stuff, and thank goodness we do, because it lets me have a job in writing and analysing and talking about football. But I think Spurs aren't going to get much of a better chance of pushing in the right direction and one day achieving big things than they have right now with Antonio Conte. I genuinely do think he is the right man in the right situation, and he's also a very emotional man. So it's about keeping him happy, I think, as much as it is pushing forward in the right way. But hey, It's part of the fun. It's part of the fun. Right, I'm going to head off slightly early, I think, maybe than recent videos, but it's been a long day. And I want to check up on how my daughter's doing as well. And yeah, it's going to be quite a house. Very strange when they kind of fly the nest, as it were. But she's not too far away. She's only about an hour and 20 minutes away. So yeah, it's not too bad. But yeah, obviously we're in that dreaded international break where good football disappears. Probably do a Q&A for the next one. So feel free to whack all of your questions underneath this into the comments. Might do a couple of Q&As to kind of pass the time, as it were, because I find international breaks as boring as I'm sure many of you do. And just like Conte, just kind of doing that and hoping nobody gets any injuries. Ben Davies does have an injury at the moment. He's got a little hairline fracture just under his knee, just kind of beneath his knee on his leg, which they hope will just be about 3 weeks. So maybe in time for the North London derby. So he'll obviously has been withdrawn from Wales duty. Other than that, I think we're expecting Lucas back from injury after the international break as well. That's it, really. I won't do a lone roundup this time because I want to check. I want to get every game. I didn't manage to look at all of them. I'll probably try and do a quick lone roundup before I do the Q&A in the next one, which will be in the middle of the week, maybe Wednesday or Thursday. So yeah, I think we covered it. I'm trying to think of any player I didn't really cover. No, I thought we'd get it. I think it's going to be, for some players, it'll be a good international break. I think Skippy can go away, get a couple of games with the under-21s. Jed Spence as well. 2 of them are in that team with that squad with Ryan Sessegnon. Dane Scarlett called up to the under-20s. I think there were 3 Spurs youngsters got in the under-18s, which was terrific. Luca Gunter, who was brilliant in the UEFA Youth League game against Sporting in the week. He's probably one of the few players to come out with credit. Alfie Dorrington's in the under-18s as well, and so is Jamie Donnelly up front. So that's great. And obviously, big news on the international front was Eric Dyer getting back in as well. So hopefully, he's had a very good week with a good goal as well on Saturday. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on international football, of course, but it's mainly to hope that nobody gets injured and that they just, I guess, increase their confidence for coming back to Tottenham and getting sharper for some of those players that, like Conte said, he's looking to rely more so on Bissouma, Skip and Doherty after this international break. So to get more minutes under their belts is only a good thing, I think, and get a little bit confident, especially people like Matt Doherty, who, you know, he's had that knee issue. I think he needs to get his confidence back as well. So, yeah, right, I'm going to head off now. Like I say, get your questions in underneath for the Q&A. And as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.